I was surprised to read because, we hear all kinds of things in the media and people come up with their own theories, but
They are, of course, talking about the people who are exposing the lies. That's not a theory. We are just basically pointing to facts that have happened, and the story writes itself. There's no theory. It is or it isn't. When she contradicts herself and lies, that is not a theory. That is a fact.
was writing this and sort of going through this entire process for you cathartic and sort of like therapy for you?
It was challenging at times because I had to kind of ask for information from family members because like I know my side of things, but I don't know the full picture. So I had
Sure.
to talk to family, I had to talk to, friends, to get a lot of information that I didn't know about.
Right. So
The side of people who miss Dee Dee is not included in the book. Of course, the side of Nicholas Godejohn, how he has been tricked into doing this while he has a disability. His side is not in the book. His parents were not questions about anything.
do you ever talk about your relationship and where they stand today with Claude or Laura? Do you talk about that at all?
Now, Claude is her grandfather, who is the father of Dee Dee, and she accuses him of molesting her. There are a few passages in the book about her explaining it. Here we can see a passage in her book where she says, she began to cry and detailed how Claude had molested her. I cried with her, letting out all of my emotions about all those years he abused me, bonding my confusion with hers. It was one of the only authentic moments I ever had with my mother. It was the only time I ever heard her say, I am sorry. And also about her mother, who was also possibly abused by him, so that you know who she's talking about right here.
Laura has passed away. She
Got it.
passed away a few years ago. I don't speak with Claude. We live like literally one town apart. But I haven't run into him since I was actually little. So,
Do you know how he feels about the book?
um, I honestly don't know how he feels about the book. He's in his 80s, so I'm not really even sure if he even knows about the book.
Okay. I mean, he doesn't really need to know. Your truth is your truth. And I
Mhm.
feel like at the end of the day, he can't dispute what your perception of any of this was, right?
Correct.
I mean, I get that. So, the people that you developed relationships with while you were in prison, do you talk to them still?
No, she does not, because she is on parole and she is not allowed to. But there are many people who she has had contact with and have exposed her for what she told them. I have made videos about it, you can go ahead and check it out. It's in my playlist, the Gypsy Rose Blanchard Rabbit Hole, which are just a summation of facts.
Fortunately, I can't.
Oh, no.
While I'm on parole, I can't have communication with them, but after I'm off parole, I can.
And how long are you on parole for?
For about another 7 months.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 7 years.
No, about 7 months to go.
Very interesting to see her being so happy that she has only 7 months on parole, but a man with disabilities and who is very, very prone for manipulation, serving life in prison and can never ever talk to anyone in full freedom without anyone listening in like the police, right? He has taken 2 lives. He cannot ever have a girlfriend. He cannot ever play music in full freedom, do what he wants, go outside. No. But she can. But the fact is that she manipulated him, a disabled man. Just let that sink in.
So what does that mean? So when you get released from prison, you go on parole for what was the time frame?
For me, I spent 8.5 years.
Honestly, nobody cares.
Total.
Okay.
And then the remainder of the year and a half.
I still don't care. Let's
Okay,
go
and
to
then
the
once
meat
you're
of the
released from
subject.
parole,
I will
you're
skip this part.
So in the book, you talk about trying foods for the first time.
There are people who have the illusion that her feeding tube was for food, but that was not the case. It was to insert fluids and medicine so she could eat perfectly well. And, she's acting like, well, I just came from out of space and now I have to try all these new things that I have never ever tried before. Wow.
And having your salivary glands taken out.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? And when you say that you were trying foods for the first time, what were the some of the things that you experienced with eating certain foods for the first time.
So, when I say, eating certain foods for the first time, it means that I've never tried it before.
Just making sure that you know that you're not like her. She is way beyond anybody listening or watching. Just so you know, very interesting. She has stickers, killer and chaos. Very interesting.
Okay.
So certain foods my mother never let me eat, or the majority of my nutrition came from my feeding tube.
Right.
And formula based nutrition.
All the way up until you were how old?
24. I was about, up until the prime itself.
She's trying to make it seem like she could not eat anything, and she was solely dependent on this feeding tube for her entire nutrition, and every other food is new to her, which is not the case. She could eat. The feeding tube was for fluids and medicine. As we can see here, what is she doing?
I'm in Cinderella's castle eating some royal mashed potatoes.
They don't recommend putting regular food through a feeding tube because it often gets stuck in the feeding tube itself.
That's so interesting. And in the verse into page 3 of the book.
Okay, let's go to page 3 of the book.
Obviously, I want people to go pick up the book and read it, buy it, all of that, but
I still cannot get over the fact that she is making money out of her crime, which is not allowed to.
You used a metaphor where you talk about it was, your throat was going to be cut, or so it was more of like a life or death sort of situation.
Correct.
Can you sort of describe what that meant to you in a way that, people will hopefully want to go buy the book?
I think that...
Just so you know that this is all a promotional stunt for her, that people will buy the book and, of course, have sympathy for her.
Obviously we wanted, and we meaning me and my co-authors, wanted to convey a sense of urgency.
Okay.
Because a lot of people can't put themselves in the mindset of where I was at with the abuse and how desperate I felt. So having
trying to justify her action. Again, I have said in so many of my videos, there are people who have had way worse abuse than she has been through. You can look that up for yourself, it's not a secret, and they don't decide to go ahead and kill their abuser. They just deal with it, and they stay off the spotlights, but she doesn't.
Statement like she was going to cut my throat. That statement stands out a lot.
Whether she's right or not, whether they were going to make her voiceless, which I highly doubt, because it was a survey, as you can clearly read, but it is about the deceptive way of her telling the story. Again, putting words into people's mouths, saying that they're going to cut my throat, that's not what they were saying, but she is using manipulation, deceit, to get people to think certain things, and that is what narcissists do, and what psychopaths do. Look at Ted Bundy. He was the most charismatic man. If you didn't know what he was doing, you would think, man, this man would never do something like that, but still he did.
And so it transports the readers into my mind and emotion.
Because imagine what would happen if she would say, well, they were just going to do another surgery, and I didn't want to do it, so I decided to kill my mother. You see, that doesn't convey the fact that, whoa, well, you really didn't have a clear reason to do it. But, man, if they were going to cut your throat, yeah, I understand, of course, I would do the same thing. So it was about telling a story and a narrative, and the way of manipulation is to put that image into people's minds who don't think for themselves and who always have the best with people. Think that, well, everybody is so kind and so sweet. I mean, I believe in the goodness of people, right? But not taking into consideration that there is evil in the world and people are not always who they appear to be.
So that's why it was so important to kind of say that and then go into the details of what I meant by that.
Right. It sort of paints the whole picture.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand. The book was very well written, and I was really impressed with how thorough it was. There were a couple things, and we'll get to it later on, about about Nick and some of the things that I didn't really know. I don't know if I just didn't follow his story as much, but in the book you said
his story is the story of manipulation and deceit. But he does not get a podium like Gypsy Rose. No, he is in prison for life. she can be out here and play this Nicki Minaj kind of individual without any talents to show for.
You were in a silent standoff, right? So your mom was desperate to sort of keep control over you. Looking back, do you still feel the same way?
I do.
Yeah.
I just feel a little bit more humanity towards her now.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta keep interrupting because, you know, it is just so embarrassing to listen to. She is now claiming to have humanity for her mother, but then saying in the book, well, Nick said we could feed her to the pigs, and then she actively thinking about this subject, like, well, maybe that's a good idea, but no, she would be too heavy for us to carry. How is that in thinking in humanity with your mother? What the hell, man? Why can't you just run away? Just leave, just like Nick proposed to do. But she did not want to do it. She insisted that they would continue with their plan.
Because after going through all like the research with family members, I started to learn that she seemed very self-isolated. She was just not someone that had a social life herself.
There is, of course, no way the gypsy could not notice that she did not have a social circle, right? Because she was not there. Of course she knew. She did not find out after researching that she was isolated. What the hell?
It was very much keep us in a tiny bubble.
Do you think that that was intentional and she was aware of it? Or do you think it was more like she didn't really know that she was doing these things?
I think maybe both.
That you've been under anesthesia?
Probably over 100, probably.
She
And
has
do you know
been
what-
under anesthesia over 100 times. Really, really interested to look into these medical records.
She would give me what we call a cocktail. And so that would be a mixture of oxycodone and Xanax together. So,
And what would that do? Would it put you to sleep or what?
yes, I mean, downers for sure. I've never tried uppers, but I have had downers, and it put me in a state of numbness. And I liked being there.
And so would you spend a lot of time in that state of mind, you think?
Yes.
I know at one point you talked about how you took the last of your mom's pills and then you guys had to go file a police report in order to get a refill because that was the
Correct.
only way that you could get a refill on the narcotics.
Correct.
When you think about that now,
She will say that she's not really proud of that. But is that because she stole it? If she's not proud of that, is that because she abused the drugs? What is she not proud of?
I mean, I definitely feel a lot of regrets because
Yeah.
that's, not behavior that I would ever condone or am proud of. That's, not behavior that I would ever condone or am proud of. But it does put it in perspective as to like what mind frame I was in.
Yeah, I mean, I just
That is the mind frame of someone who is abusing drugs and liking that state of mind.
as a mom, you're about to be a mom,
Yes.
so it's like, could you even imagine?
Could you even imagine that we are already so long in this video and there is not a word about the meat of the subject, why she is famous to begin with, or her showing remorse and regret for what she has done?
Like helping yourself and your daughter do something like that?
No, I would never.
She would never do something like that, but she already is, because she is completely exploiting her pregnancy and her baby to the entire public. She has taken everything off TikTok, but let me tell you, she is now putting everything on Lifetime for their new series, and everything will be for the public. So she is absolutely doing exactly the same thing. She is exploiting her child for financial benefit.
Like, I can't imagine, like,
Okay.
to me growing up. So, yeah,
you
and
had
I
the-
knew that they did not, or at least I knew that my mom didn't like Christy.
If I were to put up a video about my entire story, my family, what I have been through, I would be lucky if I would get 5 views. But that's of course not interesting for anybody. If she did not do what she did, she would not be famous. You know what it's called? It's called infamous. That means that you have done something very bad, and now everybody knows you because of that.
With all 3 of his daughters.
Okay.
And so one day when I was in town, my sister Facebooked me, and she's like, I'd like to meet you. And so it was great because I had me.
I don't think anybody cares about that. Everybody wants to know why you did what you did, and what is the mind of that individual. What is like pushing you to do that. That's why true crime is so interesting. You want to get the psychology, not the, well, oh, well, I have 2 sisters and I have a dog, and no, it's like, what's up with your mind? Why do you do that? Why do you do what you do? So because of that, I will skip a bit and until we get, hopefully, into the meat of the subject, because up until this point, we did not reach it, and I have deleted many parts in between.
Have you ever talked to your dad about why he was willing to marry your mom because it was the right thing to do?
Again, if I would answer that question, nobody would be interested in my answer. So, the reason why she's famous is because she's infamous. Nobody would buy my book about my entire history up until this point, because there is nothing interesting to say.
But few and far between interaction with
Right.
kids my age. And so when I was little, my stuffed animals, my Barbie dolls, my mom was my
Social life.
everything, my
Yeah.
social life.
Yeah.
So,
There are a lot of kids who have that lifestyle, who are not allowed to talk to people, to others, have friends. Look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. They are not allowed to have people outside of their religion, the Amish people, and just regular folks, because their parents are just very strict. You know? They don't decide to do that. That's not an explanation. I don't feel sympathy yet.
that's what I grew up knowing. And then as I got older, I felt it was almost like being sheltered, but
Mhm.
also taking the part of a partner or spouse in a marriage. So all of her stress would be shared to me.
Right.
Another attempt to gain sympathy is saying that she now felt like she was the other, like her husband or something, because all her stress went on to Gypsy, right? Well, even if that was the case, why do you think that is a free pass to do what you did?
And I was kind of expected to carry all of this and be that person that she needed me to be.
She now talks about parentification. It occurs when a child is forced into the role of a caregiver for their parent emotionally and practically. In this dynamic, the child feels responsible for taking care of the parent's emotional needs, often becomes a source of support and reassurance. Well, still, this is a very known thing, and many people are experiencing that.
Right. So you were the daughter, the friend, the partner,
Everything.
all
yeah.
of the things
Yeah.
from a really, really young age.
Yeah, it's like having a bad marriage without the sexual part of it.
And how do you feel about that now? Do you feel like you'll know sort of where the boundaries are for your daughter when she's born?
Absolutely. Like I feel like I don't think there's anything wrong with a close relationship with your parent or your daughter.
Right.
But there's a line
Yeah.
between normal and weird.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I'm going to shove it down your throat if I need to. In 1, 2, 3.
I mean, it's in the books.
Okay. Definitely go get a copy of this book.
Just buy the book, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book, buy the goddamn book, as I say. Yeah, just do it, you know? Just fucking do it. It's on Amazon.
And so in the book, you talk about having a baby bottle, and up until the night of the crime,
Mhm.
you were packing a baby bottle.
Can you imagine, out of all the questions that she could have asked her about the night of the crime, she asks, oh, about the baby bottle, did you pack that at the night of the crime? Like,
Bag. What was that about? Can you talk about it?
Well, my mom never weaned me off the baby bottle.
it doesn't click in her mind that minutes after what happened and she packed her baby bottle, that was going to happen to her mother. She's full of sympathy for herself. Absolutely ridiculous.
Like, we're talking a bottle with nipples.
Yes,
Did you talk
like
about
a
bringing
baby
change?
bottle.
Yes.
So, I was given formula through the feeding tube,
Mm-hmm.
but also my comfort. I never let in the bottle.
Sure.
To the point where I think that's why my teeth were buck teeth. My original teeth were bucked and just out of alignment.
Sure.
But even up until the night before the crime, I was still very much like that was my source of comfort.
Note how she talks. Night before the crime. Like it is nothing, right? Like, It's not about her, it's about me here. Come on. Camera.
So it's like I'm addicted to narcotics, and I'm also sucking on a baby bottle to give me comfort.
That is
That is
so
not really that traumatizing, is it?
hard for me to wrap my head around. How do you feel about that when you think about it?
It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre now looking back on it.
But
What is
in
bizarre? I don't understand. Please fill me in on this information I missed.
But that was my normal.
right, so during that time, you didn't know any different.
No, like that was my normal.
What is people's reaction similar to mine, where it's just like you truly are addicted to narcotics and drinking out of baby bottle?
Yeah, it's two ends of a spectrum, and somehow I landed right between them.
Nobody cares about the subject. The only thing they care about is why the hell did you do what you did. And if you were a normal person without your history and you would say, I sucked on a baby bottle until I was 24, they'd be like, damn, that's crazy. And then they forget about you the next day.
The night of the crime happens, and then you couldn't take the baby bottle to prison.
Right.
They are completely out of alignment with reality. Like, they are talking about the night of the crime. Like it is, oh, we went to the movies and then, like, so then she went to the prison without her dear baby bottle. And then it was her time to grow up. But did she? Did she grow up? Leave a comment.
So what was that like? Was it sort of like a cold turkey cut off the bottle sort of deal?
Correct. Like, I had.
I'm really sorry. I'm cracking up right there. I mean, I'm sorry, but is it like cold turkey going off the bottle? Completely, really. What the hell are we talking about here?
Taken the narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pack a baby bottle. I just kind of left my old life behind entirely.
So in some ways that had to be liberating.
It was liberating, but also scary. It was new territory. Like for me, when I'm trying something new or I'm entering into a zone that I've never experienced before,
Like BDSM role playing with Nick and then pretend that I was abused and used.
I get a lot of anxiety about it.
Yeah. I mean, rightfully so. I feel like your entire life had to be built off of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine. So CPS comes just one time.
You're gonna ask, did the police come when you tried to shoot your mother with the BB gun? And then you said, well, I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't try to kill you. I was trying to run away.
Just one time.
Your entire life.
Entire life.
I don't even have words because I've seen CPS get involved in situations for much, much less and either do something or don't. And so when you look back, I mean, at the time, did it even cross your mind to tell CPS what was going on?
I didn't even know who they were.
She had no clue who they were, and of course she had no clue that there were other people that she could ask for help, like the police and like every other thing, like your father, or just run away with Nick like he said. No, she was absolutely clueless, but she knew how to get the computer and find every single thing out about dating, about friendships, about everything. Right, but she could not figure out another way of escape.
So I want to make it clear.
Trust me, nobody cares.
I grew up like, okay, so most parents, to kind of discipline their children, they're like, oh, the boogeyman's gonna get you.
Right.
Okay. So,
Or you get a shoe thrown to your head. People get abused in childhood. Very often in the most horrible way worse than she has been through. And that they don't decide to do that. So still, go on, please.
my mom never said the boogeyman. My mom said the state. So
Yeah, so when this little girl, Gypsy Rose, heard the state, she was very afraid because she didn't know who CPS were, but she knew who the state were. And oh my god, my mother is so goddamn abusive that I just have to do it. You witch of the West.
I grew up being afraid of people that I thought were bad people.
Right.
That were going to take me away from her. And they were called the state. And so what I didn't know back then was she was telling me to be afraid of CPS. And I didn't.
I didn't know who the CPS was, but my mother said it was the state. And then only 1 minute later, she absolutely contradicts what she said. Like, it's funny. It's really entertaining, I gotta admit.
then. It wasn't until after I got out of prison that I kind of figured it all out.
Right, right.
And
So which is it? Did you know or didn't you? Who the boogeyman was? The state? The CPS? I am absolutely confused at this point.
came, I didn't know who they were. I'm like, do they work with the police? And they're asking me questions like, do I have bruises on my arms and legs?
Right. And did you?
I didn't. I didn't.
So again, she's full of it that she is being abused, but then when CPS comes, there is no abuse visible at that point in time, is what she said. At the time of the interrogation, there was no visible abuse, is what the interrogators said. So it is all kinda without proof.
In time, I didn't. However, they weren't asking me the right questions.
Right.
And
You're starting to see the picture now. They weren't asking me the right questions. Again, pushing the blame towards another person, which maybe in this case, yes, she was right. She was small, she was little. How much can you put the blame on a small little girl for what she has been through, right? But then again, she's now in her 30s and she's lying. Obviously.
kind of like where I fell through. That's kind of like where I put a lot of like guilt on me. Is because I'm like, well, why didn't I just tell them this?
Well, you were a kid. You didn't know any different. And you were also told to be, basically taught to be afraid of them.
Exactly. So I'm like, even though at this point I would have been a teenager,
Right.
but having the mindset of someone much younger because I was sheltered to be that way.
And
So-
also believed to be that. I
Yes.
think it was, what, 4 years?
Yeah.
How old are you today?
I am 33.
33.
Yes.
And you would have thought that you were what, I guess 29, right? Like if this still
Correct.
continued.
It was always like every year of an advancement was like 2 years knocked back down.
Okay.
So it was progressive.
Right.
It wasn't, when I was 10, she would say I was 9. So it started with 1 year and then 2 years, and then it just progressed to more years.
Kind of waiting until she says that she figured out that she was lied to about her age when she found it in her safe in her mother's room, that she was lied to. Can't really remember how old she was though.
Okay.
As I got older.
Because it's easier to kind of hide the years as you get older, right?
Mhm.
Like you could pass for 29, sitting in front of me today. And so that makes sense. I can't understand how, when you were talking about in the book, you were talking about the medical records and, the name spellings were off and then the dates of birth were changed and
Right.
and those all sort of slipped through the
Mhm.
cracks too.
hmm And it's really shocking to me because even in certain medical records, there is descriptions of certain illnesses. So my mother described me as paralyzed from the waist down. But in certain transcripts, there is quadriplegic,
Mhm.
paraplegic. So it is, I'm like, there's a difference in the two. So if you're a doctor, my eyes would be looking at that and automatically want to correct what's wrong. So it's like the medical records are basically scattered to the wind in inaccuracy. And it's so hard to piece together any sort of sense.
Now she's going to describe in very much detail about her files and how everything was incorrect and all that stuff. You can watch the documentary, The Act, or any other where it is described in full detail. I don't want to comment on that.
There was times as I got older
Right.
that I did want to stretch my legs and get out of the wheelchair. And so, some of the most freeing times that I had was I would play CDs on the boombox and just dance.
Yeah.
That was my freedom.
Did she
But it
know
was-
that you were doing that?
She didn't. She did not, because I would be in trouble for walking even inside the house.
She learned the way of deceit since she was very young, how she could fool her mother to do what she wanted, like get a computer, go on a dating site, like get out of her wheelchair and walk. And that's basically become the standard of her life, is to use deceit and manipulation to get what she wants.
Oh, wow. So then did you lose muscle mass in your legs because you were in the wheelchair so much or no?
I didn't lose muscle mass.
No.
No, because I still every once in a while I would move my legs here and there, not meaning to, but
She did not lose muscle mass because now and then she moved her legs. That's why she still could walk, because she moved her legs. If you don't walk, muscle mass deteriorates, and you will go to the point in which you don't have enough muscle to walk at all. Just moving your legs does not help.
she would have to correct me and be like, stop moving your legs.
At what point did you realize that you were not actually needing the wheelchair? Like, how old do you think you were?
I mean, I always knew that I could walk, and I've always been honest about that.
Why does she need to remind us that she was honest about that? Does it mean that she was not honest about something else?
But it was, and goes right into the title. This is why I wanted to have the word stand in the title, is because yes, I knew that I could walk. However, my mom didn't let me get out of the chair. So it was like I was forced to be in the chair.
That is so wild. I can't imagine. And it has to be, obviously don't want to speak ill of the dead, right? But like that has to be mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
She was abusing the system. She was using it for financial gain. She did not have to work. She got all this free stuff. And Gypsy was the tool. But still, is that a good reason? Remember why she is infamous.
So you meet Dan, and you still drank from a bottle at this time.
And she also learned how to get attention from other men by taking her clothes off and getting compliments, by doing a bit of the perversion herself, and not only Nicholas who introduced her to it.
And you pack the bottle to go to Dan's house. Did he already know this?
Honestly, nobody cares about her bottle. They care about why is Gypsy famous and why is she profiting of her crime.
I didn't know. I didn't tell him a lot. I didn't tell him I had a feeding tube. I didn't tell him about
Another attempt of me killing my mother is what Nicholas Godejohn said. It is not documented, it is just his words, so all alleged.
necessarily how weird my life was and how different it was. There was certain things that came up in conversations, like I could walk. And obviously, because I ran away that night.
Get this, she only used her muscle to move her legs. She could not walk. So, well, that was inside the house. She was basically bound to the wheelchair, but she found a way to run away from home and walk all that distance with muscles she did not have. It is a very strange, peculiar situation we have here.
But he was oblivious to a lot of what was going on.
And Dan was an adult that you met at a convention.
Correct.
And you guys had a romantic interest in each other?
I mean, I had a crush on him.
Right.
And I think he thought that I was cute.
Who was a bit older than she is, being attracted to minors. And her mother did not like that. So she basically pushed him away and said, "You are a goddamn pervert."
But it wasn't to the point where it was a relationship.
No, I did not reach that point yet.
But you guys maybe had a little bit of an interest, a fling.
I was like, he's cute.
How old is he? How old was he?
He was 36.
And he thought you were how old?
15 at the time.
So that would be a pedophile, right?
I don't like saying that word. I don't like
That would be,
labeling someone anything. I don't
okay.
like labels put on me, so that's why I don't put labels on
Okay,
other people.
fair.
That's all I'm
Okay.
saying.
But it's questionable.
She does not like labels put on her, so she doesn't use it for others, but she does it for Nicholas, telling him that he is like this, that, and the other thing in the book, talking about her mother in the most very gruesome way, if you ask me. So if that isn't a label, I don't know what is. Labeling the doctors all over the place for them not doing as they were supposed to do.
Really questionable behavior. So your mom threatened to, or she did actually like out him as, someone who liked children.
Correct. So, once my mom brought me back home after running away and catching me with Dan, that's whenever she started to like call the people that like knew about it in a very vague way.
Okay.
And so she claimed that Dan kidnapped me, that he took me to somewhere, and that like I was safe, I was found. All the while,
Her mother saved her from a pedophile. Thank God Dee Dee did that, 'cause who knows where she would have ended up if it wasn't for her mother getting her back. In her eyes, that is the last straw, because she tried to run away, but then her goddamn mother found her. Oh my God, we are going to plan B. I am telling you, I am done with this running away. It does not work.
I was chained to a bed at this time. So she's
Because you ran to dance.
because I
Oh my God, can you imagine? I'm just trying to run away into the arms of a pedophile. How? It's complete insanity. Like, why did my mother chain me to the goddamn bed? I don't understand. She does not allow me any freedom at all. I can do what I want. Just leave me alone. I'm going to run away to wherever I want to. If I'm not asking my mother for advice. What kind of kid would do that? I mean, come on, let's rebel. All the teenagers, get up, do whatever you want.
And have you had communications with Dan since?
No.
Never. He's never reached out to make sure you were good and okay.
Oh, because Dee probably whooped his ass, just like he deserves. Who was going to mess with a 15-year-old when you're in your 30s? You're a pervert.
We had a text exchange
Mhm.
like the day that I got arrested. And he had texted me and he's like, everybody says you're missing. Are you okay?
You were supposed to be my toy. Get back here, you mother.
That was the text.
That was the text. And I never had any communication.
Wonder if he learned his lesson now that Dan is all out in the public, listening to Gypsy's life story.
Wow. He was because he was scared. He was on parole, right? You found out that or house arrest?
It wasn't house arrest. I think I found out that it was like probation. Parole,
Okay. And then
probation and parole.
he would have gotten in trouble probably for talking to you at that point.
Probably.
That is exactly the reason why some people are very strict with their kids and don't allow them to do a lot of things. Because they will run into these types of people who are on parole, are not supposed to talk to them. That is not child abuse. That is being a very protective parent. Maybe an overprotective parent for some of them. Just noticed that Gypsy is also on parole. What's up with that?
Was this to Dan's where you ask the neighbor, or is this the second time that you run away, that you get to the neighborhood and you knock on somebody random's door?
That was the first time. So that was with Dan. Yeah.
Okay. So he's in the hospital. Okay. So you just knock on some random person's door?
I did. So it was the community, the housing community that was right on the side of the Habitat for Humanity community.
Okay.
So it was literally up the street.
Okay.
And I knock on the first person's door that I see.
And you're like, I'm like,
I called him.
So and then I was kind of done with the running away thing. And then I decided, you know what? That's not going to work. We need something else. Quick.
Boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I was like, my boyfriend is in the hospital. Can I get a ride?
They didn't know who you were?
They didn't know who I was.
Second attempt to escape was in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the mindset at this time? You're like, I already had a failed escape. You go back home with your mom. She tells you can have Dan as a friend, but you were like, no, I need to escape still.
Her mother is not the bad guy here. She does not want her to fall into the hands of a pedophile. But let's listen what she has to say about this second attempt to escape.
She changed you to the bed.
That was
between incidents?
Yes. So I mean, that was definitely like a cracking point, is that I never submitted, I guess you can say.
But she did submit to Nicholas Go to John in their BDSM role-playing, where she said he introduced the violence and the gore and the murder, but then it was her who introduced Nicholas to do it in real life. He did not want to do it. He said, let's run away together.
So the idea that this was going to be my life.
So did that first attempt give you almost like a hope that you're like, okay, I didn't do this right the first time. I could do it the second time.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I make certain differences. So, I pack a bag in the middle of the night. I'm going
not find the pedophile to run into.
To attempt to leave, to just go anywhere. Because at that point, I hadn't texted with Dan, so I had no idea where he was.
Okay.
But I was just gonna run.
And just see where
I was gonna be homeless. I didn't care what I had to do. I was just gonna go.
But that one failed as well.
It failed as well. She found my backpack. And that's whenever there was a standoff, and that's whenever I shot her.
So the second attempt, she tried to run away. Mother found her backpack, said, no, you're not going to run away again into some kind of strange individual. She then said, okay, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna get a BB gun and try to kill you. I'm sorry to say it in such a harsh way, but this is exactly the mindset of her. Is what she's saying.
BB gun.
Okay, so that is actually the next question I have is, why did your mom have the BB gun to begin with? Why did she buy that from Walmart?
The interviewer playing into her story of the sad little girl, saying, well, basically it's your mother's fault, but tell me, why does your mother have a BB gun to begin with? Many people in America do have guns, and not a BB gun, but a real gun, in case of protecting themselves. That's not a very, position to put your mother in as some kind of violent individual.
So she had bought that because she had told me it was to keep Dan away. So
Did you think it was a real gun?
no,
You knew it was a
I
BB
knew
gun.
it was a BB gun.
Okay.
Which in certain documentaries and transcripts and stuff like that, some people are like, "Oh, well, she didn't know it was a BB gun." No, I knew it was a BB gun.
Okay.
Of course, she had 7 years in jail to think about the perfect narrative, what makes it a believable story that she is very innocent indeed. Of course, now she says, yes, no, I knew, and then people are saying, well, I was not trying to kill her. What do you mean I knew it was a BB gun? I just tried to give her a little scare.
So
you didn't think it was going to kill her or anything?
No.
Okay. And when you shot her with it, it was to scare her, or did you think it would kill her?
Just like I said, to scare her. Let's see what Gypsy Rose has to say about that. What has she been practicing in her jail cell for 7 years to say?
Oh, no, it was just a scare.
Okay. Okay. Did you get out of the wheelchair to shoot her with the BB gun?
I didn't. I stayed in the wheelchair the whole time.
What is the state of the frame of mind for that? Like, I guess
have no idea. It's when you are in a state of being so afraid, logic goes out the window.
right.
So I may have been touched on this in the book where the night of the crime, I was going around the house taking pictures off the wall of me because I thought, well, maybe the police won't know I live here.
Yeah, you said that in the book.
All logic just goes out the window. So in that moment, it was complete survival mode. Nothing made sense. So get out of the wheelchair. Yeah, that didn't cross my mind. It's like stay in the wheelchair, stay in the wheelchair. I'm
Right.
programmed.
The narrative is she was way too afraid to stand up of her wheelchair, but she was not afraid to pull the trigger.
We still live together. She and I had a joint laptop that we would share together.
She was still allowed to have some influence from the outside. She was not completely sheltered and put in her room and not allowed to do anything than what her mother said. She could explore the internet, which is full of information, which she could freely use to get another wave out of the situation.
And electronics was difficult for her to let me be on.
Right.
Another contradiction. They had a shared laptop, but it was difficult for her mother to let her be on that. So which is it? Did you or didn't you have access to the internet?
Because of what happened in the past.
Right.
So, electronics was just something that was definitely a hot button issue.
Right.
So I mean, there was a little bit of manipulation on my part, and I
Admitting to manipulation.
Too good to own up to that. Where I did, it was like Christian mingle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my logic was, oh, a Christian guy would be like a good guy.
And little did you know you were going to get the complete opposite.
Well, guess who thought exactly the same thing? Nicholas Godejohn. He was just looking for love. You know what I'm saying? Just doing his thing, making music, okay, being a bit weird, masturbating in McDonald's, but he has no criminal record of trying to shoot her mother with a BB gun. Doesn't matter if it's a real one or a fake one, you still did it.
And restart as of now.
Yeah.
Wow. The things that I learned in this book about Nick was insane.
I am so interested to hear this. What is it that you have learned? Tell me, Gypsy, what is the narrative?
From like the media headlines, documentaries, and things like that was that, you allegedly manipulated someone who possibly was, disabled in some ways.
He has Asperger's and autism level 2, in which he requires assistance so he will not get into trouble. Possibly disabled? No, he was disabled. It is diagnosed. He has been to another school, a special school for people like him. So it is not possible. It is completely true. It is in the documents. She is playing in to this narrative of her. It is absolutely ridiculous.
And that was not confirmed or, anything in the book, but I think that is some of what the public thinks. But
Right.
Based on what I read in this book was that he was already having all types of very, very violent fantasies prior to even meeting you.
Correct. He had.
Please leave a comment if you're listening up to this point so I know I'm not talking to myself. But she has a history of a complete crazy individual who just shoots up people and tries to run away into the arms of a freaking idiot. Maybe has a bipolar disorder, as she says herself in the text messages. So she is not any better than he is.
With other ex-girlfriends
Who reached out to you?
who reached out to me to warn me that he was like that. And I'm like, oh, it's just, it's a scorned ex-girlfriend. And I just kind of like brushed it off, like, oh,
Right.
whatever. Like, they're just talking smack.
And you just ignored it.
I just ignored it.
Or did it ever scare
Oh,
you?
look at me. I am just a sad little girl just waving my ponytails. I was just this butterfly that he was. So basically this butterfly introduced a vampire to kill her mother in real life. Imagine the irony of that.
He was going to do something to you?
I mean, of course, later on in the relationship, but I still was in the mindset like, well, this person loves me. This person is giving me attention. Like,
As you can see in the text messages, she was very much in love with him, calling them dear and please and honey. You know what I'm saying? It's all documented. You can just go ahead and read through them.
like this person loves me for me.
You can look past the violence at that
I could
point.
look past it.
So
And he still loves you to this day, Gypsy Rose, in 2024, after everything that you have been through. But then she says, oh, then you can just look past the violence. What violence? There was no violence. It was BDSM. That means role-playing. It does not mean anything like acting this out in real life. He did not introduce her to do it in real life. Please look up BDSM, what it means, or just watch another video of mine where I broke this subject down.
I don't want to say too much because I want people to read them in the book, but I want people to read them in the book.
Buy the book, buy the book, buy the goddamn book. Fuck the Son of Sam law, who cares?
The things that some of the ideas that he brought to you about how to unalive your mom were twisted.
And all of that is factual.
His idea was to run away. You can look it up in the trial of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. It is on YouTube. She admitted that it was her idea. She said that she wanted to do it. And even though he said, I don't want to do it, I want to run away, it is the last resort.
It's in Facebook messages.
Please excuse me, I would like to insert it in this video, but my time is unfortunately limited. So please watch a previous video where all the Facebook messages that he had, I put them all in the video and narrated them. Continuously said that it was the last resort, he did not want to do it, but she insisted on doing that instead of running away.
Is actual proof that these things were said. Whether or not those case files are released to the public, I'm not sure, but there is a paper trail.
There is not a bad word of what she has done, what she has said. It is so interesting to hear her. Yesterday I was thinking, it makes me think of this confronting Belle Gibson type of thing, where she just lies and lies. She faked cancer and got away with it until she didn't. Please watch it. Kinda looks like Gypsy Rose.
Come up in court, like in trial.
It did. It was discussed.
So people could find that if they wanted to. I'm sure.
The prosecutor definitely did.
This was the first time I had read that, so I don't know if
You know what they also said in court? Let me play it again.
His disability is clear from all this, including the tape, the interviews. You can see it. It's obvious. His disability is clear, and that would have affected his mind. She paid for everything. He didn't have any money. He couldn't have paid for anything. Acted the part well. And again, she was so desperate that she felt like the only option for her to have a life was to kill.
there's a little bit of attention on it, in the media, but I was shocked. I couldn't even.
Not a lot of people know about that stuff because what is in a confidential case file, because he is still going through his appeal, is a portion of case files that are not out to the public.
Okay.
So her claim of fame here is that there are things that you don't know, but I do. So hold your horses and just believe me.
So, that's why I think a lot of people are just like, okay, it's one-sided. And then, in my opinion, whether it was conscious or not, I feel like maybe we manipulated each other.
Absolutely.
Maybe we have manipulated each other. Can you believe that? She manipulated him. He has a disability, Asperger's, and autism level 2. He is very prone to manipulation. And she was the one who came up with the idea.
It was mutual.
Right. Right. But I definitely don't.
So if it was mutual, how come he got life and you didn't? Instead, you got a new show on Lifetime instead of Life in Prison.
To go unsaid that there were definitely fantasies of these things before he even
Prior
met
to
you.
meeting me, yeah.
And I think that's a misconception. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clear for
Yeah.
sure. Quote, Nick told me I'd be a woman if he carved me up with a knife. What is
I
that
have
mean?
made a complete video about this. This makes me so angry. You cannot participate in BDSM activity and then later on say that you're abused. That's not the way it works. That's why they say within healthy BDSM what you do is you do it only with people you trust. Because why? Because this will happen if you don't. When you break up with someone, that person will say that you have abused them, which is not true.
He often, talked about fantasy violence.
Yes, fantasy violence, and what you talked about is real life violence. Please leave a comment if you are just as angry as me listening to this. I cannot do it, but I have a bit to go, so please bear with me.
So I think it was more along the lines of fantasizing about what I would let him do to me.
She is just describing BDSM. Well, how bloody interesting. Don't you know how many people are doing that at this exact moment? And will do it in ages to come. And no real violence will come out of that. She's describing that. She's not describing the crime that occurred. It has absolutely nothing to do with this fantasy, because it is not supposed to be acted out in real life.
In terms of how far would I be willing to go?
And then that would make you a woman.
Right.
Wow. And then you talk about sort of the sexual side of your relationship with Nick and some of the things that you would participate in. Where was Dee Dee during that time?
So a lot of times for certain pornographic photos or videos, if my mom went to Walmart, it was done while she was out of the house or while she was asleep. So I could get out out of bed for a few minutes without her noticing,
Right.
depending on how much she was under influence of Ambien. So
Did you have to go to bed when she went to bed?
yeah, we typically went to bed together. Everything we did together, shower time, bath time, sleep time, like everything was
No,
together.
that's messed up indeed.
Wow. I don't think that is known though. Like in the book I didn't realize that it was at the same time, but that makes sense because she has to make sure that you're under her.
Right, routines was aligned.
Okay. Wow. And then Nick told you at one point that if y'all ever had a daughter together, he would take your daughter's virginity at 13.
Correct. And I broke up with him after he said that. We had a huge argument after that. I broke up.
See, it doesn't matter what you say because you went back to him after that.
I'm done. I called him a bunch of names. I was like, I am never gonna let you do that. So you just lost me.
This is so one-sided. I am really wondering if she's going to talk about when she really scared Nicholas Godejohn, told him she thought she was bipolar, and then said, I'm sorry, hon. When we are together, I will no longer have these episodes. That's what she said. But of course she cannot talk about it because it will absolutely destroy her narrative of being the victim. Because that's what she knows how to play very well.
And then he basically talked me back by saying that I would never do that. That was my other personality.
Such a bad boy with all of his personalities. But of course she also had personalities. Ruby, Demona, who loved and lusted after gore and violence, didn't care about law enforcement, and did exactly as she wanted. She did that willingly.
But I would never let him do that. So I got back together with him based on his promises.
Very naughty girl, you deserve a bit of a spanking there.
And he had an alter ego essentially, or the other personality. That
He
was
had
Victor.
a few. He had
Oh,
a
he had a few. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know, was Victor the evil twin?
Victor was the
evil
evil
twin.
one. Yeah.
Okay. So looking back, are you afraid of him?
I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine putting myself in a position to be that close to someone that has that level of instability.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Again, I need your help here. Please leave a comment. I'm so tired of commenting on her bullshit, because this is just complete nonsense.
I don't think I've ever met someone like that, and so I think that we have to be, we have to be aware and
You
be
have
careful
to very
and
much be aware of who.
Yes, indeed, we have to be aware of people who are on parole for killing their mother and now are trying to take the public eye, influencing young people and pretending that it's all good and fun and games. You should enforce the Son of Sam law. I'm serious. Get this person off the internet.
You're talking to,
Mhm.
because you just never know what their frame of mind is.
right. How do you feel about online dating now?
I most certainly does not hope that she's going to online date when she's with Ken. That is another very disturbing mindset to be in.
It's not for me.
No, you cannot do that ever again because you are with Ken. Unless you separate, then you might do that if you like.
I'm not gonna knock it for everybody.
Right.
For some people it works, but I'm not one of those people. So.
Where did Nick's mom think that he was going? She knew about you, right? To some degree?
To some degree, yeah.
Did she know the level of, I guess, the depth of your relationship at that time?
She knew that we were in a relationship.
Okay.
She didn't know the ins and outs of our conversations or
Very disturbing to talk about that with your mother, what your plans were and what you were doing, making those videos, doing those things, which are perfectly fine, but don't just talk about that to your mother, man.
or, our plans or whatever.
Right. Okay. And have you talked to her since the night of the crime?
She has passed away.
Everyone has passed away.
This is exactly the reason why she must get off the internet and stop doing this. Stop making money off this crime. Nope. These so-called armchair investigators, me included, will not stop making videos until she gets off the internet.
Ironically enough, she passed away in June around the same time that the anniversary of the crime.
The longer I watch this, the more disturbing it gets, I'm telling you. The anniversary of the crime. Can you imagine you celebrating the crime? What the hell, man? This is so disturbing, man. I am telling you, I do not know why Lifetime still wants a season 2, if not to profit of this crime. This is so disturbing, I'm telling you.
Happened, and it was overdose.
Oh, wow. Do you know if Nick was allowed to, can you leave for a funeral in prison?
In the state of Missouri, you cannot.
You can't.
You cannot. You could watch a bereavement video that is sent to the prison, and you can watch it with the chaplain, but you can't attend a funeral.
So,
Kinda logical that you cannot attend a funeral, because imagine criminals accused of the most heinous crime coming out in public. That's why there is a prison.
able to do any of that stuff for Dee Dee?
I was not.
No. That's so interesting. You have microdeletion 1q21.1.
Correct.
It's a chromosomal change in which a small piece of chromosome 1 is deleted in each cell. This increases the risk of delayed development, intellectual disability, physical abnormalities, and neurological and psychiatric problems, but you sort of went unscathed.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Correct. So I don't display the correlations. They say, my doctor said, not cause, but correlation between the microdeletion and these illnesses.
But it's unclear whether your mom knew that or not?
Correct. So that's the thing. So my father just got recently tested for it.
Okay.
To see if it
I'm not interested in this stuff. I will skip forward.
So it could be that, my daughter.
I removed about 5 to 10 minutes of this interview. She really likes to talk about herself a lot.
She might not, but if she does, then at that point we'd have to watch her grow.
Another attempt of removing the nonsense. Nobody's interested in that stuff. They're interested in your mind. What is the mind of a criminal?
would just tell my, tell my stories,
Yeah.
tell stuff about what happened and
Mhm.
everything. And we use that as a foundation.
Criminals on probation should not profit of their crime.
So we were able to kind of build off of that. But building a framework was much more difficult because it's kind of like, okay, where do you want to start? There's such
Yeah.
a big timeline.
Mhm.
There's so much to talk about. In documentaries, you only get an hour,
Yeah.
2 hours at most to kind of sum everything up. You have to sum up a whole 24 years
Yeah.
of crap.
Well, and also
So also, it is also a biography now. Nicki Minaj's biography. Interest. I can write a memoir of my life full of crap. Are you going to buy it? No, because I did not commit the act she did. So it's not interesting.
trying to put things in the book that weren't necessarily public knowledge through the documentaries.
Exactly.
Because I was nervous about what was going to be in the book. So I was like, haven't we seen everything? But there are some details in here that I wouldn't have known unless I read it.
Correct.
I don't understand why the interviewer supports her unless it is for profit gain. You know what I'm saying?
Close with Michelle and Melissa.
Yes.
And so what was that like? Did you ever question like their intentions or have,
No,
trust
I
issues?
knew Melissa since 2019.
Again, nobody
She ended up
cares.
speaking
I will
with my
skip
family since
forward.
2017.
used to the chaos, but you don't know that in the time. So right, like people will be like, well, Gypsy, you couldn't have got up and walked out of the house. No, you couldn't because you were in this more of a mindset of, that sort of cycle. It was like a mental, not a game, but like a mental abusive cycle too. It wasn't just the physical
Exactly.
abuse.
And that's something that I think is
There is nobody that is holding that against her, that what she has been through is some kind of, let's just not talk about it, it's all good. No, it was bad. She was not supposed to go through it. It is very bad. But then again, how do you deal with it when you're older? And how the hell did you come to the decision to do this act? It's very, very disturbing.
important because it's like we all have our haters, we all have our naysayers, and to the ones that are like, well, you knew you could walk the whole time, why didn't you just get up and run away?
I have listened to a lot of haters, so-called, and naysayers. It's not about that. It is about manipulating him to do it, and so forth and so on. What I have repeated in this video over and over again. And now when you're older, in your 30s, continuing this deceitful kind of behavior, which is very obvious.
They don't understand the mental prison that is abuse.
Right. No, and I think that you're right. Other forms of abuse and toxic relationships sort of can relate in that way.
I will repeat myself again. Do you know how many people have been through abuse way worse than she has been through? I'm talking about domestic violence. I'm talking about satanic ritual abuse. You can look up all these types of things that go in extremes. A premeditated idea, a planned idea to kill their perpetrator. They don't do it.
That's a good point. I do have a couple general questions that are not necessarily related to the book. Did you read anything in prison? What books were you reading in prison?
Honestly, nobody cares, and this is a very good point to end this video.